Learning Council is honored to have with us State Representative Craig Horn of North Carolina to talk about the future of education in his state, but also across the nation. Recently, there was an article that was run in North Carolina. It talked about the warehouses there that were usually full of textbooks 10 years ago, 20 years ago, are 80% empty. That a new policy and strategy for North Carolina is to get all digital learning happening in schools without textbooks within 2 years. How is that? What is that strategy?
Well, that's our goal. Is we set a goal of 2017 to convert to the digital environment across the board. We're pretty well on track to achieve that goal, but it may have to slide 6 months to a year just because of the physical challenges of ensuring that every classroom has wireless broadband to a sufficient extent for every student, as well as training teachers how to use this new digital environment. The story about the warehouses being empty of books is somewhat of a double-edged sword. I think the story was originally run to sort of indicate how the cutbacks in spending on education have so severely damaged the delivery of textbooks and materials and supplies. And quite frankly, that's true to a point. The point being that on one hand, we have had to make some significant and terrible cuts across the board in North Carolina. When I came into office in 2011, this state was nearly $3 billion in the hole, overspent by $3 billion. We were in the teeth. We weren't coming out of the recession in 2011. We were still in the teeth of it all. Where do you find $3 billion? There's not a rock big enough to hide that. So we had to make some very difficult decisions, and unfortunately the low-hanging fruit often is textbooks and supplies. But now which actually began the process for us to look more seriously at the digital environment. And as we looked more seriously, we realized that we could actually over the long term reduce our costs for textbooks and supplies, not only because we wouldn't need textbooks to the same extent, but because we would be able to deliver updates quickly, efficiently, and to pretty much every kid in North Carolina without the need for another printing of another textbook. So we add that to the fact that we're getting incredible complaints. I don't mean to belittle these complaints, but these kids are carrying 70-pound backpacks around. I mean, for a 9, 10, 14-year-old kid, there's going to be some injuries. It's not like when I was in school, we left half our books at school anyway. Of course, it was a different time. But today, with a laptop or a pad or a tablet of some kind, there's more information available than in 20 textbooks. And it's up to date, but it's not always correct. And that begets the challenge for teachers to ensure that they're teaching our kids to be critical, to ask questions, to challenge the information put before them, and to be able to sit back and deliver a critical analysis of what they're being heard and balance things out a little bit so that they can make their own decisions. As a consequence, business and industry will be better served. Our students will be better served. Our state and our country will be better served as we become more adept at handling this new environment.
Fantastic. Yes, and I imagine, well, as a legislator, the question you get asked by your constituents is, what are you giving me for my tax money? And so I guess my question is, what is North Carolina, the state budget for K through 12? And what percentage of that budget is approximately what is going towards the transformation to digital?
Well, our state budget for K-12 is a little over $8 billion. Our total education budget in North Carolina is over $12 billion out of a less than $22 billion general fund budget. So almost 60% of our entire state budget goes to education, and over 60% of that goes to K-12 education. So I am frequently asked by a taxpayer, what am I getting for what I'm paying? And I think that's a fundamental responsibility of legislators, is to be able to tell the taxpayer, here's what you're getting for what you're paying, and here's the outcome of of what you are paying. Here's what, not just what you're getting, but here's what the results of what you're getting are to be. So as far as what percentage of that is dedicated to the digital piece, it's a little bit fuzzy, and because there's so many pieces and parts to it. Digital education is wireless connectivity. It is programs and resources. It is devices, and it is most of all professional development for the teachers and the administrators and how to use a digital environment. We have, in my opinion, been in entirely too big a rush to put a gadget in the hands of a kid and say, therefore, we're in the digital age. Or we think that by shoving a textbook into a computer, we're in the digital age. And that's frankly just not true. It's a process, it's an activity, and it's dynamic. It changes not just every day, it changes by the moment. As new information is discovered, all of us with our gadgets in our pocket and in our purses, we're constantly barraged with updates with this app and that app because we're learning more every day on how to do it better. And that's the key to the entire digital environment is better. High quality education delivered quickly and to every child in North Carolina.
Fantastic. Teachers are told that they have 180 days to move kids to the next level. How do you see technology changing teaching and the way teachers teach?
That's a huge challenge for a teacher. Is how do you move all those kids in a very short period of time from point A to point B? Education is growth. It is inherently growth. It's how much have you learned? We also know that it's a lot harder to move a kid from a D to a B than it is to move a kid from a C to an A. But in a classroom, we've got kids from A to F. We've got kids that come hungry. We've got kids that come that have had a difficult morning and maybe a difficult year. So the digital environment will offer us the opportunity to speak directly to each individual kid, wherever he is at a given point on a given subject. Inherently we know that different people learn different things at different rates. The digital environment allows us to fine tune and deliver the education to a child in the way the child can learn best, reinforces that education, challenges the child, and gives immediate feedback. That immediate feedback is one of the most critical parts of education, period. How would you like to be a pitcher on a mound? You throw the ball, and as soon as the ball leaves your hand, you cover your eyes and don't get to see where it hits. And next week, somebody hands you a piece of paper and says, okay, that's how you did. Well, what have you learned from that, really? Well, the same thing is with a kid. You take a test. You took the test. You don't know what you got right. You don't know what you got wrong. Next week, they give you and said, oh, you got these things wrong. Well, come on, man. Help me out here. With the digital environment, when you get it wrong, we can tell you, you got it wrong. Think again, try harder, put your mind to it, let's give it another shot. Well, maybe you didn't get it. Well, that tells the teacher and it tells the programmer that, we need a little more work in this area. But over here in this other area, we might be sailing. So we don't need to spend a lot of time in that area, but the kid sat next to us might. That's the beauty of the digital environment, is we can deliver that education to each and every child exactly where they are, challenge them, encourage them, pat them on the back. This is just such an exciting time in education.
Fantastic. Can you tell me a bit of your position? You're on a couple different boards or associations in regards to education for North Carolina, or a few years back, you sort of stepped into positions because you saw this. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, when I originally decided to run for office, it was really my grandkids that talked me into it. They said, Grandpa, you always told us, you can't just talk, you got to do. Well, I've eaten my words, and you know something? They taste pretty darn good. I got to the legislature in 2011, not really involved in education, albeit education was education was the number one issue in my constituency, which is Western Union County. in my freshman year, I was on the education committee, but really just beginning to learn. The more I learned, the more, like a lot of things in life, the more you learn, the more you want to learn. And I got more involved, and when in my second term, when the leadership asked me to get truly involved in education appropriations and then education policy, I just saw great opportunity and just that feel that this is an exciting time. We're coming out of a terrible recession. We had to make horrible cuts in certain parts of our education, but over the last 4 years, we've added $1 billion to public education spending in North Carolina. Now today, I co-chair House Appropriations for Education, and I co-chair House Education Policy for K-12. I'm involved in all the education policy. I work very closely with our senior budget chairs in writing the right kind of budget for North Carolina. And I'm proud to tell you that for the first time in North Carolina history, our education budget proposal from the House passed out of committee with 100% support. That's both sides of the aisle all voted in favor of supporting the House education proposal. It included exciting new initiatives as well as pay increases for our teachers, new professional development opportunities, and of course a heavy emphasis on moving even further and more rapidly into the digital environment.
Fantastic. And so that leads me to one question. In these committees and so forth, have you talked about specific carriers or applications or publishing companies that are delivering software to North Carolina schools, maybe some of the statewide allocations that would go, these are the companies we're going to work with?
When we began this process 4 years ago, we set 4 fundamental criteria for our move into the digital environment. And maybe I shouldn't call them criteria, 4 pillars or 4 pieces to the puzzle. First and foremost is connectivity. Secondly is curriculum. Thirdly is professional development. And lastly are devices. Now, I must tell you, I'm not so sure at all that it should be the business of the state to be in the device business. We have LEAs across the state that have varying policies on devices. Some have bring your own device, some issue tablets, some use Chromebooks. There's a wide variety across our state in the types of devices. I'm not at all sure that that's a role for the state, other than that, of course, funding is a primary role for the state, as well as help those LEAs work together to ensure that they're getting the best price and the best product for their particular needs. Even though we all think we are unique, we may have 2 or 3 or 20 LEAs that use actually the very same device. So the state can play a role in being a broker for the acquisition of devices.
Just now, quickly, could you define for us the LEAs at Learning Education?
That's a local education agency. A school district, in other words.
Oh, okay.
In North Carolina, we have 115 school districts, or LEAs. They are not all, we have 100 counties, so you can see that some of our LEAs are either go cross-county or are let's say, a city LEA or a regional LEA, but it's a little bit of a mixed bag. So with 115 LEAs, there's a high likelihood that several are doing roughly the same thing. And by the state acting as a clearinghouse or coordinating facility for them, they can achieve more economical results in their purchasing. Now, when it comes to the programming, different LEAs, different school districts have different needs. We have Northeast North Carolina, which has suffered terribly in the recent recession, just terribly. And they've got a long way to go. So their programming needs and educational needs are different than those, let's say, in Wake County or Mecklenburg County, which is our largest school district in the state. Then we've got the area in Research Triangle Park, where we have a very high level of technology, the kids that attend public schools there have moved a lot further along than, let's say, some of the kids, as we call it here, down east in the very rural, poor areas of our state. So for us to say this is the program for the state, I'm not so sure that's what we should be doing either. In fact, what I think we need to be doing is first, as I said earlier, make sure every classroom is connected and connected with enough bandwidth to satisfy every student. Second is to ensure that we have a curriculum that utilizes the digital environment, but not so detailed that we take away from the teacher the fundamental teaching process to discover where each one of our kids are or his kids are, and to move them from there to the next level. And then lastly, to provide those teachers with the type of professional development that helps them. You know, today, pretty much every kid, and I'd say pretty much every person in North Carolina, carries in their pocket some type of a device, a cell phone of some type, a smartphone of some type. And the fact is that thing has more computing power than what it took to send a man to the moon and return him safely to the earth. But the kids know more about how to use that device than do the teachers. And the teachers know more about how to use that device than do the people teaching the teachers to be teachers. We've got the paradigm upside down and we need to turn it over. That's where professional development is the key to making it work. So rather than rush out and put another device in a kid's hands, let's work with our teachers, our professional educators, bring them into this process, help them parlay their knowledge and their feel for their kids into an exciting opportunity for every student in North Carolina, nay, every student in the country. We can do this. It's right there for us. It's simple, but it's not easy. And we got a lot of work ahead, a lot of challenges. There's going to be a lot of resistance, but that's okay. We'll get there because we can, we want to, and we must.
Well, thank you, Representative Horn. We've taken up a lot of subjects all about the importance of the future of education, and so I appreciate you taking the time with the Learning Council.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and to others that may see these clips, and I hope they all share my excitement and enthusiasm. We are at the front door of as they say, a brave new world, an exciting new world of education and education opportunity. Thank you all very much.